The ship moves. We walk through hell.
The void remembers everything. It remembers when human laughter echoed across 1,000 worlds, when children played beneath alien suns, when hope was more than a forgotten word whispered in darkness. The void also remembers a day that laughter died, swallowed by something far worse than death itself. Lieutenant Vera Kowalski stood in the observation deck of the mining station Obsidian Gate, watching the stars with eyes that had forgotten how to dream. 23 years old, born in the belly of a refugee ship, she had never seen Earth except in faded holographic recordings. Her calloused hands traced the cold metal railing as she remembered her grandmother's final words, spoken through blood-flecked lips after the last evacuation from New Oslo. They took everything, little one, everything but our will to remember. The zombies came from nowhere and everywhere at once. That was what the old survivor said, the ones who remember the before times. Captain Thomas Valdez, commander of Obsidian Gate, was one of those relics. His weathered face carried scars that told stories of battles lost, of world abandoned, of choices that would haunt 1,000 lifetimes. He rarely spoke of those days, but when he did, grown soldiers wept like children. The infection did not simply kill. It transformed. It learned. The first wave had been mindless corpses stumbling through space stations, easy enough to contain with airlocks and fire. But the plague evolved faster than human understanding could follow. Within months, the undead were piloting ships, coordinating attacks, using tactics that made seasoned admirals look like children playing with toy soldiers. Within a year, they were growing their vessels from the bodies of converted, creating living warships that healed themselves and adapted to every weapon humanity threw at them. Engineer First Class Devon Park had been just 7 years old when the zombie armada reached his homeworld of Tionshire Colony. He remembered hiding in a ventilation shaft with his younger sister, her small hand gripping his so tightly it left bruises. He remembered the sound that came from the corridors, the wet dragging noises, the voices of neighbors begging for death that would not come. His sister had made him promise they would survive, that they would make the monsters pay. She died 3 days later when the air recyclers failed and toxic fumes filled their hiding place. Devon kept his promise anyway. Obsidian Gate was supposed to be safe, buried deep in a gravitational anomaly that scrambled all conventional sensors. The 100,000 souls who called it home believed they had found sanctuary in a cosmic blind spot. They mined asteroids, recycled everything, spoke in whispers about the day they might reclaim their heritage. They taught their children mathematics and history, music and art, desperate to preserve some fragment of what it meant to be human. But safety was always an illusion in the new reality. The alarm shattered the quiet of Gamma's shift like a hammer through glass. Vera was moving before her conscious mind registered the sound, years of drilling overriding everything else. The station's communication system erupted with Captain Valdez's steady voice, the kind of calm that only came from accepting the worst had already happened. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. We have incoming. The screen showed them first as distortions, ripples in space that made the background stars shimmer like heat waves. Then they materialized, sliding into reality like tumors pushing through healthy flesh. 3 ships, each one a nightmare of twisted biology and corrupted metal. Bone-white armor plates pulsed with disease light. Organic cannons swiveled with predatory grace. And along their hulls, faces pressed against translucent membranes, thousands of converted humans screaming soundlessly into the vacuum. Devon recognized one of those faces. His training officer from 2 years ago, a woman named Hiroshi, who had taught him everything about reactor maintenance. She had transferred to a supply convoy that never returned. Now she was part of the ship itself, her eyes empty holes weeping black fluid, her mouth frozen in eternal agony. The zombie ships did not broadcast demands or threats. They simply opened fire. Obsidian Gate's shields held for exactly 42 seconds. Vera counted every one of them as she sprinted toward the fighter bay, her heart hammering against her ribs like something trying to escape. The station shuddered with each impact, lights flickering as power systems rerouted to compensate for catastrophic failures. Behind her, a bulkhead exploded inward, sending shrapnel through a dozen fleeing civilians. She did not stop, could not stop. Stopping meant thinking about the blood, and thinking meant breaking. Captain Valdez stood on the bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing their systematic destruction in perfect detail. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Yuki-chun, had already calculated their survival odds with brutal precision, 0.03%, effectively nothing. The captain touched a hidden panel on his command chair, revealing an interface that had been installed decades ago, in another life, by engineers who understood that some choices had to be made ready before the moment of truth arrived. "Send the message," he said quietly. "All of it. Every record. Every tactical analysis. Every scrap of data we have on their ships and weapons and tactics. Broadcast it to the Havenfall coordinates on emergency channels." Yuki's fingers danced across her console. "Sir, that will give away our position. Every zombie fleet within 50 light years will know we existed. They already know, Lieutenant. They have always known." Valdez smiled, and it was the saddest thing Yuki had ever seen. "But maybe someone else will learn from our deaths. Maybe that will be enough." In the fighter bay, Vera climbed into her cockpit alongside 11 other pilots. They were not enough to win. Not even close. But Devon had spent the last hour rerouting power from every non-essential system into their weapons arrays, overcharging them beyond safety limits. They would get one good strike before their ships tore themselves apart. It would have to be enough. The launch tunnel opened onto stars and death. Vera's fighter screamed in the void alongside her squadron, their combined firepower lancing toward the nearest zombie vessel. For one beautiful moment, it seemed to work. The organic armor cracked, split, began to bleed luminescent fluid into space. Then the ship healed itself, flesh knitting together faster than human eyes could follow, and returned fire with weapons that made the void itself scream. Back on Obsidian Gate, as systems failed and hull breaches spread like infection, Captain Valdez sat in his command chair and watched his people die. The emergency broadcast was still transmitting, still screaming humanity's defiance into an uncaring universe. He thought of his wife, dead 30 years now on New Beijing. He thought of his daughter, converted somewhere in the zombie empires, her face probably pressed against some ship's hull alongside Hiroshi and millions of others. He thought of all the choices that had led to this moment, this final stand that would accomplish nothing except adding more names to the endless list of the fallen. The bridge exploded around him in fire and decompression. But the message kept transmitting. And in the darkness beyond the gravitational storms, in a place called Havenfall, where the last fragments of humanity clung to existence, someone was listening. Someone was learning. Someone was getting very, very angry. The message arrived at Havenfall like a ghost screaming through walls of static, broken and desperate and real. Communications Officer Dmitry Volkov had been monitoring the dead channels for 6 years, listening to nothing but cosmic radiation and his own thoughts. When the signal punched through the interference, he nearly fell from his chair. His hand shook as he routed it to the Central Command, where High Commander Rebecca Stone was reviewing supply reports that showed their dwindling resources in numbers that told only one story: slow extinction. Rebecca was 47 years old and looked 70. Command did that to you when every decision meant choosing who ate and who went hungry, who lived and who died quietly in the medical bays when medicine ran out. She had led the Havenfall survivors for 12 years, ever since the previous commander put a pistol in his mouth and painted the wall with his despair. Some nights she understood exactly why he had done it. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Captain Valdez's final transmission. Rebecca watched it twice, then a third time, her jaw clenched so tightly her teeth ached. The tactical data was extraordinary, more detailed than anything they had possessed before. Obsidian Gate had been documenting zombie ship movements for years, tracking their evolution, identifying weaknesses in their organic armor and regenerative systems. The station had sacrificed everything to give them this information. She called an emergency council meeting within the hour. The Havenfall council chamber was carved from the interior of a hollowed asteroid, its walls bearing the names of every lost human world: Earth, Mafs, Proxima Home, New Beijing, New Oslo, Tianchi Colony. Hundreds more, each name a gravestone for billions. Counselor James Wu head of engineering, arrived first, his prosthetic arm whirring softly. He had lost the original to frostbite during the evacuation of Arcturus Station, but he never complained. Beside him came Dr. Patricia Osei, Chief of Medical Sciences, whose research into zombie plague had cost her 3 research teams and most of her sanity. General Hassan Kamathi represented their military forces, such as they were. 200 aging warships, most held together with salvaged parts and desperate prayers. 15,000 trained soldiers, another 30,000 militia, who knew which end of the gun to point at enemies. Against the zombie empires that had consumed half the galaxy, it was laughable. "We cannot keep hiding," Rebecca said without preamble, playing the transmission for them all. "Obsidian Gate found us. If they could, others will too. The gravitational storms won't protect us forever." James Wu leaned forward, his engineer's mind already working through possibilities. "The tactical data shows their ships have a flaw. The regenerative systems depend on a distributed neural network. Disrupt enough nodes simultaneously, and the entire vessel goes into cascading failure. But we would need weapons we don't have, power sources that don't exist outside of theory. Then we build them," Dr. Osei said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She pulled up her own research files, decades of work that most had dismissed as the obsessions of a traumatized mind. "I have been studying the captured zombie tissue samples since the Vega evacuation. Their organic technology is not magic. It follows rules, biological imperatives. We can replicate it, adapt it, turn their own weapons against them." The chamber fell silent. What she was suggesting went beyond every ethical boundary humanity had once held sacred. It meant becoming like the enemy, fusing human engineering with the very plague that had destroyed them. Hassan spoke first, his voice heavy. "If we do this, we stop being who we were. We stop being human in any way that matters. We stop being those humans the day Earth burned," Rebecca replied. "The question is not whether we keep our innocence. We lost that watching our children starve in refugee holds. The question is whether we survive to see tomorrow, and if we do, whether we make the monsters pay for every drop of blood they have taken from us." The vote was unanimous. The project began in secret, buried deep within Havenfall's most restricted zones. James will assemble a team of 40 engineers, the best and most desperate minds among the survivors. They called themselves the Prometheus Group, after the Titan who stole fire from the gods and paid eternally for his transgression. It seemed fitting. The work was horrifying from the start. They dissected zombie tissue samples, studied the way infected cells communicated through quantum-entangled particles, learned how the undead grew their ships from converted biomass. Engineer Katarina Reeves vomited the first time she watched organic metal flow, like liquid flesh across a test frame, hardening into armor that could withstand plasma fire and repair itself within seconds. She stopped vomiting after the 3rd time. You could get used to anything if the alternative was extinction. Dr. Osei pushed her teams to extremes that would have resulted in prosecution in the old world. They experimented on cloned tissue, grew miniature zombie organs in containment, mapped the genetic sequences that allowed the plague to spread and adapt. Twice, containment breached. Twice, they incinerated entire laboratory sections along with everyone inside. The names went on the walls with all the others. But slowly, impossibly, they made progress. The first breakthrough came when they discovered how to interrupt the zombie neural networks without killing the tissue itself. The second came when they learned to interface human computer systems with the organic components, creating hybrid command structures that responded to human thought, but used undead regeneration. The third breakthrough happened when someone no one ever admitted who suggested they stop, try and build ships, and start growing them. The first prototype was called Prometheus 1, and it was beautiful in the way nightmares could be beautiful. 60 meters long. Its hull a seamless fusion of titanium alloy and modified zombie tissue that rippled like muscle beneath skin. Weapons grown from compressed star matter, capable of firing beams that disrupted cellular cohesion on contact. Shields that learned from every attack, adapting in real time. An artificial intelligence system that combined human strategic thinking with undead pattern recognition, creating something that could predict and counter enemy movements with frightening accuracy. Pilot Neo Koro volunteered for the first test flight. even knowing the neural interface might kill her. She was 29, born in space, and had lost everyone she loved to the zombies. "If it kills me," she told Rebecca before entering the cockpit, "at least I died trying to hurt them back." The interface worked. Barely. Nia screamed as the ship's systems flooded her nervous system with data, her brain struggling to process the torrent of information. But she held on, forced her mind to adapt, learned to think in the ship's language of biological imperatives and tactical probabilities. When she emerged 6 hours later, blood streaming from her nose and ears, she was smiling. "It works," she gasped. "God help us, it actually works." They built more, hundreds more. James Wu designed them larger, more powerful, incorporating every lesson learned from Obsidian Gate's sacrifice. They built vessels the size of cities, each one a fusion of humanity's greatest engineering achievements and the zombie plague's most terrifying adaptations. They named the ship Class Titans, and they were exactly that, gods of war built from desperation and rage. The flagship took 3 years to complete. They named it Retribution, because some words captured everything that needed saying. 12 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could fracture moons, powered by reactors that bent space itself. Its crew of 5,000 trained in simulators until they moved as one organism, every role memorized, every emergency procedure drilled into muscle memory. General Hassan personally selected the ship's commander, a woman named Zara Oshiro who had survived the fall of New Alexandria by killing 17 zombies with nothing but a fire axe and absolute refusal to die. Commander Oshiro stood on Retribution's bridge for the first time and felt the ship wake up around her, its systems recognizing her neural signature and binding to her consciousness. For a moment, she was a ship, her awareness expanding to encompass every deck, every weapon system, every crew member. It was intoxicating and terrifying. "Status report," she said, her voice steady. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Rafael Santos, consulted displays that showed the full Titan fleet assembling in space around them. 300 capital ships, each one a nightmare made real. Each one crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. "All vessels report ready. Commander, the fleet awaits your orders." Zara looked at the tactical map, showing known zombie territories, those sprawling empires built on human graves. She thought of her brother, converted on New Alexandria, his face probably decorating some zombie throne ship now. She thought of Vera Kowalski in Devon Park, and every other soul who had died at Obsidian Gate, their sacrifice giving humanity the tools for one final throw of the dice. "Set course to the Draken sector," she commanded. "It is time we reminded the galaxy what happens when you try to extinguish the human race." The Titan fleet moved as one, engines burning like newborn stars as they tore open reality and vanished into faster than light. Behind them, Havenfall's remaining population watched through observation ports, holding their breath, praying to gods they had stopped believing in years ago. High Commander Rebecca Stone stood alone in her office, looking at the names on the walls. So many names. So much loss. She touched a fresh carving that read Obsidian Gate and whispered a promise to the dead. "We will make them remember us." Every last one. In the darkness between stars, the Titan fleet raced toward vengeance, and the zombies had no idea death was coming for them wearing humanity's face. The Draken sector had once been called the Pearl of Human Space, a cluster of 7 terraformed worlds where art and philosophy flourished under twin golden suns. Children played in gardens that smelled of earth flowers, carefully preserved and cultivated across light years. Poets wrote verses that made grown adults weep with beauty. Scientists pursued knowledge for its own sake, not for survival or weaponry, but simply because understanding the universe was a noble endeavor. Now it was a graveyard wearing the skin of an empire. The Titan fleet emerged from faster than light at the sector's edge, and for a moment, every human aboard felt their hatred crystallize into something pure and focused. The zombie empire sprawled before them like a cancer, thousands of organic ships orbiting dead worlds where millions of converted humans pressed against transparent membranes, their silent screams visible even across the vast distances of space. The twin suns still shone, but their light illuminated only horror. Commander Zara Oshiro felt retribution respond to her rage, the ship's hybrid systems amplifying her emotions through the neural link. She forced herself to breathe, to think clearly. Anger was fuel, but strategy won wars. Beside her, Lieutenant Rafael Santos had gone pale, his hands trembling slightly as he processed the tactical data. They were outnumbered 50-1. "Commander," Rafael said softly, "there are at least 15,000 zombie vessels in this sector. Our projections show 73% probability of total fleet destruction if we engage." Zara smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Those projections assume the enemy has faced weapons like ours before. They have not. They have feasted on our weakness for so long. They have forgotten that humans are most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. She opened a channel to the entire fleet, her voice carrying to every ship, every crew member who had survived the unsurvivable and chosen to fight anyway. "This is Commander Oshiro. Every person on this fleet knows loss. We carry the names of the dead like stones in our hearts. Earth, Mafs, New Alexandria, Obsidian Gate, 1,000 other worlds where people we loved drew their last breaths." On the Titan ship Vengeance, Captain Marcus Chin listened with tears streaming down his weathered face, thinking of his daughter who'd been 8 years old when the zombies came to Proxima home. On the destroyer Defiance, pilot Nia Okoro gripped her controls and thought of the family she would never see again. Throughout the fleet, 15,000 souls remembered their reasons for being here, for becoming the very monsters they had once feared. "The zombies think they have won," Zara continued. "They think they broke us. They think we are extinct, irrelevant, forgotten. Today, we teach them the most important lesson humanity has ever learned. We do not break. We bend, we hide, we suffer, but we do not break. And when we come back with teeth." She gave the order. The Titan fleet did not charge in like heroes from ancient stories. They moved with precision born of desperation, each ship executing maneuvers that seemed impossible, using the gravitational wells of dead planets to slingshot into attack positions. The zombie vessels detected them too late, their organic sensors confused by the hybrid signatures that read as both human and undead, both prey and predator. Retribution fired first, its main cannon releasing a beam of compressed stellar matter that cut through 3 zombie capital ships like they were made of paper. The undead vessels tried to regenerate, their organic systems flooding damaged sites with new tissue, but the weapon disrupted cellular cohesion at the quantum level. The ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist, unraveling into component atoms that scattered across space like forgotten dreams. The zombie fleet reacted with the coordination they had perfected over centuries, thousands of ships moving in concert, organic weapons charging with disease light. They had destroyed human fleets before. This would be no different. They were catastrophically wrong. The Titan ships moved like they were alive, because in some horrible way, they were. Their adaptive shields absorbed incoming fire and learned from it, reconfiguring their energy matrices to counter the next attack. Their artificial intelligence systems predicted zombie movements with accuracy that bordered on precognition, positioning themselves perfectly to exploit every weakness Obsidian Gate's sacrifice had revealed. Engineer Katarina Reeves, now serving as Chief Tactical Coordinator, watched from her station aboard Retribution as her algorithms executed flawlessly. Each Titan supported the others, creating overlapping fields of fire, concentrating their attacks on zombie neural network nodes exactly as the simulations had predicted. When zombie ships tried to adapt, the human weapons adapted faster, learning and evolving in real time. It was beautiful and terrible, a dance of annihilation choreographed by grief and genius. A zombie carrier ship, massive enough to blot out stars, launched waves of fighter craft grown from human corpses, still screaming inside their cockpits. Pilot Neo Koro led her squadron to intercept, her hybrid fighter responding to her thoughts faster than any mechanical system could. She thought of Vera Kowalski and Devon Park, of all the pilots who had sacrificed everything at Obsidian Gate to give them this chance. For the fallen, she whispered and opened fire. Her weapons were not bullets or missiles, but concentrated beams that severed the quantum entanglement holding zombie tissue together. The infected fighters disintegrated, their pilots finally released from a nightmare of undead consciousness. Nia wept as she killed them, knowing each one had been human once, knowing she was given the mercy of true death. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human casualties mounted, ships damaged, crew members killed by lucky shots or system failures. The destroyer Defiance took a direct hit to its reactor core and vanished in a flash of white light, taking 800 souls with it. The cruiser Remembrance lost structural integrity and split in half, its crew sucking out into vacuum as the ship died around them. But for every human ship that fell, 10 zombie vessels were erased from existence. Dr. Patricia Osei watched from Havenfall, monitoring the battle through quantum-entangled communication links, her medical teams standing ready for the casualties that would inevitably return. She had created the hybrid technology that made this possible, had crossed every ethical line to give humanity this weapon. Now she watched it work and felt something she had not experienced in decades. Hope. The zombie fleet broke first. Their coordination shattered as human weapons destroyed too many neural network nodes, leaving individual ships operating on instinct rather than collective intelligence. They began to flee, organic engines screaming, as they tried to escape into faster-than-light. Commander Zara Oshiro did not let them. "All ships," she commanded, her voice cold as the void. "No survivors. No mercy. They gave us none. We returned the favor." The Titan fleet pursued the fleeing zombies with systematic efficiency, hunting them down one by one. Some begged for mercy through quantum channels, their undead intelligence sophisticated enough now to understand fear, to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. The humans did not respond. There was nothing left to say. By the time the twin sun set on the dead worlds of Draken sector, not a single zombie ship remained functional. Thousands of organic hulls drifted through space, their neural networks shredded, their crews truly dead for the first time in centuries. Among those faces frozen in death, Zara finally found what she had been searching for. Her brother, still recognizable after all these years. Finally at peace. She stood on Retribution's observation deck, watching recovery teams begin the grim work of documenting the dead, and felt something break inside her chest. Not her resolve, not her strength. Something softer, something she had locked away the day New Alexandria fell. Lieutenant Raphael found her there an hour later, tears streaming silently down her face. "Commander," he said gently, "the fleet awaits your orders." Zara wiped her eyes and straightened her uniform. Around them, the Titan fleet regrouped, damaged ships already regenerating their hybrid hulls, crews already preparing for the next battle, because there would be a next battle, and another after that. The zombie empire sprawled across 100 sectors. This was only the beginning, but it was a beginning. "Send a message to Havenfall," she said. "Tell High Commander Stone that the Draken sector is clear. Tell her that humanity is not extinct. Tell her we are coming home." She paused, looking at the names etched into a memorial wall beside the viewport. Obsidian Gate, Vera Kowalski, Devon Park, Captain Thomas Valdez. Thousands more, each one a person who had mattered, who had loved and hoped and died, so that others might live. And tell her we are bringing the reckoning with us. The message reached Havenfall 3 days later. When High Commander Rebecca Stone read it, she gathered everyone who could fit into the main assembly hall and read it aloud. The cheering lasted for hours. People wept and embraced, strangers holding each other as decades of suppressed emotion finally broke free. Children who had never known anything but hiding and fear heard adults laugh with genuine joy for the first time in their lives. James Wu stood with Dr. Osei and General Hassan, the three of them watching the celebration with expressions that mixed relief and sorrow. They had created something terrible to save their species. They had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. But they had given humanity a future. Was it worth it? Patricia asked quietly, "What we became to survive." James thought Katarina Reeves, watching her algorithms execute perfectly, of every engineer who had vomited at their work and then returned to do it anyway. Hassan thought of Zara Oshiro and every soldier who carried the weight of necessary evil, so others would not have to. "Ask me when the war is over," Hassan replied. "Ask me when human children can play under alien suns again without fear. Ask me when the names on the walls stop growing longer." The Titan fleet returned to Havenfall for repairs and resupply, and when they depart again 2 months later, they were stronger. More ships, better weapons, Crews who had tasted victory and found it sweeter than anything they had imagined. They struck at zombie holdings across the galaxy, each battle planned with ruthless efficiency, each victory bringing them closer to reclaiming what had been stolen. The zombie empires fell one by one, their collective intelligence unable to adapt fast enough to weapons that learned and evolved as quickly as they did. Within 5 years, the undead threat was not eliminated but contained, pushed back to isolated sectors, hunted relentlessly by human fleets that never forgot and never forgave. Humanity rebuilt, not on Earth, which remained a tomb too sacred to disturb, but on new worlds claimed from the ashes of war. They built cities that celebrated both their past and their future, gardens where children played and learned the names of lost worlds not as nightmares, but as history to honor. They built memorials too, vast walls covered in names, because forgetting the dead would be the final victory for those who had tried to erase them. Commander Zoro Shiro eventually retired from military service, passing command of Retribution to a younger generation who had known only the war years. She spent her final decades teaching at the academy, training new officers, making sure they understood both the cost of survival and the responsibility it carried. On her deathbed, surrounded by former crew members who had become family, she smiled and whispered her brother's name one last time. She had kept her promise. They all had. The galaxy learned to fear humanity again, but it was a different kind of fear than before. Not fear of peaceful explorers who might be betrayed, but fear of survivors who had walked through extinction and emerged as something harder, something that would never again allow itself to be vulnerable. Human ships patrolled the void with weapons that made even the strongest empires think twice before threatening them. But in the parks and gardens of new human worlds, in the laughter of children who would grow up knowing security their parents had never experienced, in the art and music and poetry that flourished again after decades of silence, something else survived too, the part of humanity that the zombies had tried to kill but never could, the part that dreamed and hoped and loved despite everything. On the memorial walls, new names appeared less frequently now. The list stopped growing. And on quiet nights, when the stars shone bright, survivors would stand before those walls and remember everyone who had made this possible. They would touch the names and whisper promises to the dead. We survived. We endured. We became what we needed to be. And we never forgot who we were fighting for. The end.